I desperately wanted to do that show. And I
Yeah.
remember coming to London and being gutted. I mean, it was amazing production, I have to say. The production was beautiful. But I just felt, oh, I'm never going to get the chance to choreograph this show now because they've all got the rights, I presume. So when Nikolai did ask, I literally bit his hand off to take it.
Just talking musicals, musicals with you. Hello, I'm Lesley Ann Knight, and welcome to this special Christmas edition of Just Talking Musicals. In this show, we're going to be looking at an iconic musical which not only became the top-grossing film of 1954, but also featured an Oscar-winning song which went on to become one of the biggest-selling songs of all time, the film and stage musical White Christmas. With music by Irving Berlin and starring Bing Crosby, Danny Kaye, Rosemary Clooney and Vera Ellen, it's not hard for us to look back and see how this film became not just a one-hit wonder for 1954, but a perennial hit for countless generations, which eventually found its rightful place on the stage as well. And we also have an added extra Christmas treat lined up for you, in that I'll be meeting up with award-winning choreographer Stephen Mear to talk about his work on the stage musical at Leicester Curve and London's Dominion Theatre over the festive seasons of 2018 to 2019. So, just in case you need a reminder on the storyline, White Christmas is the story of two army pals, Bob Wallace and Phil Davis, whose friendship is inextricably bound together when, serving as soldiers in war-torn Europe, Davis saves Wallace's life one Christmas Eve when he pulls him clear of a collapsing wall. After the war, Wallace resumes his show business career and agrees to team up with Davis, partly to show his gratitude for saving his life. As a team, their career goes from strength to strength, and they become famous Broadway producers. One night in Florida, they go to watch sisters Betty and Judy Haynes after getting a note from an old army buddy saying it would be great if they could help his sisters with their act. It so happens that straight after they meet, the girls have to do a moonlight flip from the club to escape an unfriendly landlord chasing a bogus debt. And with an eternally optimistic eye for a pretty face, Davis helps the girls escape out the back window of the club, hands them his own train tickets and into a waiting taxicab where they head off to Vermont to their next engagement. One thing leads to another. The boys, thanks to Davis, bump into the girls on the Vermont-bound train, and next thing they know, they're all going to a ski resort in Vermont for the holiday. But when they arrive, it's not quite what they were expecting. It's December, and there's a distinct lack of snow. On they go to their lodge, only to find it's run by their old Major General from the army, the man the whole company would have laid down their lives for. With no snow, the business is in dire straits, and so Wallace and Davis come up with a plan to stage their Broadway-bound revue at the lodge, and Wallace goes on television with an appeal to all his old army buddies to show up at the lodge on Christmas Eve to join in the show and surprise their general. And so the scene is set for some of the most memorable songs ever written by Irving Berlin, with some great performances by Hollywood legends, designed to get everyone in the mood for the festive period, no matter where they are. Rather than write completely new songs for this film, Irving Berlin called on his back catalogue of work and produced some stunning songs out of the hat. Blue Skies, Sisters, The Best Things Happen While You're Dancing, Love You Didn't Do Right By Me, Count Your Blessings, and of course that final number, White Christmas. Over the course of his very long life, and he lived to the grand old age of 101, Irving Berlin published around 1,500 songs, and I don't think this includes the songs he used to keep in his old trunk, pieces he'd written but either not developed or hadn't found the right time and place to let them be heard. As far as the film White Christmas was concerned, it must have seemed like an obvious next step for Irving Berlin to take. In 1953, he was in his 60s and well established as one of the most successful songwriters the world has ever known. And here's another thing. When you watch the film, you might be forgiven for thinking the producers got the first cast they chose for White Christmas, but that's not quite the case. Having a track record as a partnership in the 1942 film Holiday Inn and then the subsequent one Blue Skies, the studio were keen to cast Bing Crosby and Fred Astaire in this new take on an old theme. But Astaire was eyeing up his retirement and wasn't that interested, and Crosby reportedly only came on board after a bit of cajoling from Mr. Berlin himself. Donald O'Connor was then cast as Phil Davis, but he injured his leg, and that's how Danny Kaye ended up landing the role as Bing Crosby's sidekick. As for the Haynes sisters, Rosemary Clooney and Vera Ellen were both given ample room to show off their talent with the wonderful Love You Didn't Do Right By Me sung by Clooney, and the dance sequences, choreographed by Robert Alton, enabled Vera Ellen to display her virtuosity and leave us in no doubt as to why she came to partner some of the most talented leading men of the day, including Fred Astaire, Gene Kelly and Donald O'Connor. Love You Didn't Do Right By Me is a wonderful song, and Rosemary Clooney delivers it beautifully. She's centre stage in the scene, singing in the club, lamenting the loss of her love, surrounded by a group of male dancers dressed in black to match her doleful mood. But even though Clooney is obviously centre stage and singing, after a while your eye is drawn away by one of the young dancers in the scene. It's a relatively unknown George Chakiris of West Side Story fame, appearing on the silver screen just a few years before he landed the role of Bernardo in the 1961 film and winning himself an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. White Christmas was filmed in Technicolor and was the first film to be shot entirely in the new style VistaVision, a new super-wide aspect ratio which had been developed by engineers at Paramount Pictures in 1954, just in time to showcase in this new film. And of course, being Hollywood, there was bound to be a bit of dubbing here and there in the musical numbers. Singer Trudy Stevens provided the singing voice for Vera Ellen in all the numbers except in the duet Sisters. It's set in the club in Florida when the girls have just discovered that Wallace and Davis has come to watch their act. There's no doubt that Rosemary Clooney, famous for her dulcet tones, is definitely singing her own line, but Vera Ellen, who was best known for being a dancer, had her voice dubbed by none other than Rosemary Clooney. But would you believe it, when it came to record the soundtrack album, Clooney's contract with Columbia Records made it impossible for her to participate, so they had to bring in none other than Peggy Lee to cover her voice. Even before the film was made, the song White Christmas was already a star in its own right. Between 1942 and 1952, it sold 3 million copies of sheet music and 14 million records, and 9 million of these were by Crosby alone. And in time it became one of the most valuable copyrights in existence. Now, that was back in 1954, and White Christmas became one of those family films that we were all content to watch over and over whenever the festive season rolled around. And it seems no one ever questioned quite why it had never been adapted for the stage. That is until the year 2000, a mere 46 years after the film first premiered, when Irving Berlin's White Christmas premiered at the Muni Theatre in St. Louis. With a book written by David Ives and Paul Blake, the original production starred Lara Tita, Karen Mason, Lauren Kennedy and Leroy Reams. And over the years since it first appeared in St. Louis, it has not only toured the US, Canada and the UK, but impressively made its way to the bright lights of Broadway and the West End. The Christmas season of 2018 welcomed a fabulous production at the Curve Theatre in Leicester in the UK, which subsequently moved south to London's West End in 2019, marking a successful collaboration between the Curve's artistic director, Nikolai Foster, and two-time Olivier Award-winning choreographer, Stephen Mear, who introduced exciting new choreography that brought forth perfectly dazzling praise from the critics. The cast included Danny Mack as Bob, Dan Burton as Phil, Claire House as Judy, Danielle Hope as Betty and Brenda Edwards as Martha, finally making White Christmas a must-see stage show for all the family for generations to come. And so, it got me thinking, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could meet up with Stephen Mear and talk to him about the show? Wouldn't that be a fabulous Just Talking Musicals treat? So here we are, the wonderful Stephen Mear. Good morning.
Morning.
It's lovely to see you there.
And you.
Joining me to chat about White Christmas this morning.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant.
And one of the things, although I know I've already in the episode for White Christmas that have given you my usual build-up, I couldn't resist this. It was the reviews that you got for White Christmas from the Dominion last year, and they go like this: a terrific dose of pure escapism, The Times; expertly choreographed spectacle, The Telegraph; dazzling and joyous, The Stage; and perhaps my favourite out of all of these, Stephen Mear is a total wizard, and that was from Hannah Waddingham, the actress. So I gather it went well then.
Yes, it did. It was, and it's wonderful. Yeah, it's just the perfect show, isn't it, for Christmas? It's beautiful.
Yeah. When did you first see the film? Because the show's based on the original film, isn't it?
I saw it as a little kid when I was young with my mum, I think about 8 and 9. And I've just been obsessed. Between you and me, it's actually one of my favorite pieces of film that I am mad about. You know, the choreography in it is stunning. The music's beautiful. I mean, Irving Berlin is just to die for.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't know, it just grabbed me straight away. There's some fantastic bits of choreography that really excites me.
And yes, it's the perfect, and it's also the perfect recipe for happiness, isn't it? It's a joyous.
Without a doubt, and if there's anything we need at this moment, it's that.
Oh, I should say, yeah. And one of the interesting things about the show that you did, um, in well, it started out in Leicester, didn't it?
Yeah.
Your show,
Yeah.
and at the Curve, yeah. And but it was developed in America, I think around 2000. Um, but it was 2000 it first came to being as a musical, and the film was 1954. I always think that's amazing, that huge gap between the film and the show coming about.
I think it's getting the rights because I don't think we use all the music from the show, the film, sorry. We use different bits of music, like I love a piano, we love Blue Skies, and we do, at the opening, we do Happy Holiday that goes into Let Yourself Go, which are tremendous numbers for me as a choreographer.
Yes.
But all the old favorites are in there, like, you know, Sisters and like Christmas, and, you know, there's loads of it, it's still in there.
Yeah.
We also got, I think we were lucky to get those fabulous pieces of music in as well.
Yes, it's always a bit of a nightmare, isn't it, with rights? And I noticed that some of the songs were different, and I thought, was that sort of creativity at work, or was it actually just having to fight with the copyright?
Yeah, it would be to fight with copyrights, I'm sure, without a doubt, you
Yeah.
know. But I'm glad they did it. I'm so pleased they did it.
And of course, with this musical for the film, it's a fairly simple story, isn't it? But the choreography in the film is fantastic, and the opportunity for choreography in the musical is equally great. And I think one of the things that I've talked to you before about is that some people always think it was Bob Fosse who choreographed.
Yeah, because originally I thought it was Jack Cole or Hermes Pan. That's
Yeah,
who I was thinking of because I think it was a bit before Bob's time, I think, you know. So yeah,
and it was Robert Alton.
yeah, who's amazing. I mean, he's a genius.
Yes, and when you look him up, because we all do, we don't have to open a book so much anymore. You look him up online, and he was associated with Cole Porter, so he
Yeah,
did the choreography for Anything Goes. What else? There was Pal Joey. All these beautiful old
yeah,
musicals he was involved in, and um, I mean, I'm primarily a singer, but one of the things I love reading about, in the same way as you read about with singing, is that people's style. And Robert Alton, was renowned for the way that he worked. He worked well with individuals as well as with big groups, didn't he? And
yeah, yeah.
his style um, is, I suppose, the people describe it as whirly swirly, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, one of my best bit of choreography that always inspires me, even if it's nothing to do with the show I'm working on, is the best things happen while you're dancing, and that's Danny Kaye and Vera Ellen, and it's just so beautifully structured, put together the way it builds. They dance on wood, they put tap breaks in, they do the jazz, they float and do the ballet. I mean, it's beautiful. It's a stunning piece of choreography.
Yes, and I found, funnily enough, I found a fantastic article online about that number, about Robert Alton, but particularly on that, about the best things happen while you're dancing, because it's such a stunning scene, isn't it? They've gone outside the boys have just met the Haynes sisters, and it's Phil, isn't it? He goes out
Yeah,
with Vera Ellen, and he's sort of, I suppose, he's just sort of trying to chat her up, and then they go into this beautiful dance number, don't they?
yeah,
And before you know where they are, you can probably describe it better than me. There's this sort of monorail thing.
yeah. That they glide along, don't they? They just glide along. It's fantastic.
And again, it's so beautifully choreographed, and they just flow from one part of it to the next. And I found in this article that it wasn't, everybody always sees people dancing and thinking it always looks so effortless, and, oh, well, you just dance beautifully. But I found this list of personal injuries incurred on set, in rehearsals. And particularly relating to the best things happen while you're dancing. One of them was for Vera Ellen, and it was a personal injury report. It's all very dry from the 1st of December 1953 when they were still filming. And it says Vera Ellen, actress, rehearsing dance routine and slide on monorail with Danny Kaye, injured finger on right hand, nothing known or reported. And then finger placed in splint by hospital at 11 a.m, sent by car to have finger x-ray, drama. And then Danny Kaye, a similar report, and that was 3 days later. So they were having great fun on set, quite clearly. Rehearsing dance routine, best things, doing aerial turn on bar, swinging, landed on side of right foot. I imagine that's an easy
Yeah. Oh, I got
calamity. And he refused to go to the studio hospital, went to his own doctor. Because you just think, right, no, you can just imagine these things happening, can't
yeah.
you?
And of course, they'd be old pros, wouldn't they? And they'd want to get back to work so quickly.
Yes. But also, I don't know whether it was in that number as well, but Robert Olsen also, I think he got smacked in the head with a camera, and I think I mean, there are so many personal injury reports, and I should think you get it on any film set, and everybody's got to be so careful. But as a piece of history, it was really fascinating to
That
read.
is very, I mean, that's amazing you've managed to get that. I think that's really interesting. I mean, this is how much I love the number at the end. He's on one knee and she shenays around him and he's doing this and she trips over his foot. And you can just see it at the very last section. That's how sad I am. That's how many times I've watched it and wanted and been inspired by this number.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that I think when I've spoken to you before. I've always thought of Danny Kaye as being a character actor, not so much a dancer. But actually, when you look at the film, in the film choreography, Danny Kaye is a proper dancer, isn't he?
Yeah, he's brilliant. Yeah, he's a brilliant dancer. He probably wouldn't say he was a dancer first, but you know, but I think he's fabulous. So I mean, you know, I think he's just a triple threat, isn't he? He's a wonderful.
Yeah, proper song and dance man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, from from the old school. Yeah, so that was I was dying to talk to you about those injury reports because it's just all part of the process, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And
It's interesting you saying Robert got hit by the camera, the choreographer, because you can tell it's not just the director's eyes that's created that number. You're seeing it through the choreographer's eyes. So I'm sure he would have had a big say on camera angles and where things were because it really does follow his choreography brilliantly. Because sometimes, like on TV nowadays, and Strictly does it sometimes, when they film things, I think, just keep still, let me watch a bit. Don't go behind when I'm sure the choreographers must be screaming. They just get a bit clever sometimes and it doesn't show the whole number. And I think it's a shame.
yeah, I agree with you. They're too busy sometimes focusing on one element, aren't they?
Just being clever with the camera, making beautiful swirly effects. And maybe you want to be watching something clever that the choreographer's done.
Yeah, and I suppose that brings me ahead of my questions to talking to you about the way that choreography and direction really, really meld together, don't they? In terms of putting a show together, the collaboration.
Yeah, I mean, I think collaboration is the most important thing, Lesley. Really is, especially with. I just think you should never know where a director started and a choreographer started or taken over and finished. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Where one starts and the other finishes, and should never know. It should be seamless, and that's if you're lucky enough to work with good directors. It's a dream because Nikolai was fantastic that way. He was brilliant. Our collaboration was so good, and he was so generous to me. He'd ask me things about scenes as well. He was just really generous, and like I choreograph a lot of scene changes. I'm so used to the director just saying, "Mike, this is what I want it to be." Like Trevor would say, "This is how I want it to end." Just if we can stage that into it, and whereas Nikolai actually helps choreograph the scene changes as well, which is very rare with directors. But
yeah.
it means so we were very collaborative all the way through.
And of course, you just mentioned the lovely Trevor Nunn for Anything Goes,
Yeah,
along with Nikolai Foster, and it was Nikolai who you collaborated on with White Christmas, wasn't it?
yeah, and Scrooge the year before.
Oh
Was the
yes.
first time I'd worked with him. And I mean, as soon as he asked me, he said, "Would you do singing? Right? Would you do a White Christmas with me?" And I said, "Oh my God, yeah!" Because when it was done, was it nine? Did you say when was it done? 19
Originally, I think it was done. It probably
musical.
oh 1954,
Yeah, but the stage version,
2000.
2000, that was it, because I desperately wanted to do that show. And I
Yeah.
remember coming to London and being gutted. I mean, it was amazing production, I have to say. The production was beautiful. But I just felt, oh, I'm never going to get the chance to choreograph this show now because they've all got the rights, I presume. So when Nikolai did ask, I literally bit his hand off to take it.
Just talking musicals with you.